Hello, I'm just going to make a quick video here on absolute value functions. So let's start and talk about what the absolute value sign means. So let's say you have the absolute value of -3. That just means you write 3. So the absolute value just strips away anything negative inside and returns a positive. And if it's already positive inside, then it just stays positive. Now, how does that relate to something like this? Absolute value of x. If we make an equation out of this, how do we graph that? Well, the best way to explore a new function is to just try a few x values and see how it behaves. So let's make our little table of x's and y's, and here we've got our x-axis and our y-axis. So let's just start with -3, -2, -1, 0, 1, 2, 3. And we're going to take this -3 and we're going to stick it into our function. And when we do that, when we do y equals absolute value of -3, then we get 3. So our input here was -3, and our output is +3. Same thing with -2. Absolute value of -2 is +2. Absolute value of -1 is 1. Absolute value of 0 is 0. Then 1, 2, 3. So when we graph this, we have the point -3, comma, +3, -2, -1, 0, and you end up with this V shape. So that's the absolute value function. It looks like that, V. Now let's do some transformations with this. So we're going to start with y equals absolute value of x. And again, when we graph this, it's going to look like, let me just make some marks here. 1, 1, 2, 2, 3, 3, and so on and so forth. You got that V shape. Now what if I do this new function? Let's write this one in green. Let's do y equals absolute value of x plus 2. Well, let's use our table of values again and see how this is going to behave. -2, -1, 0, 1, 2. If I put a -2 in there, so get that -2 and stick it in, then absolute value of -2 plus 2 is 2 plus 2, and that's 4. Absolute value of -1 plus 1 is 1 plus 2. 1 plus 2 is 3, 2, 3, 4. So what this does is it lifts it up by a factor of 2. That plus 2 raises all the y values by 2. Lifts all the y values up by 2. Okay, so now we can move it up and down, right? If we want to move it down, we would just say y equals absolute value of x minus 3, and you'd have something that looks like that, -3. Okay, let's do something now where we move it from side to side. Y equals absolute value of x minus 1, and yeah, let's just do that. So we got our x, our y, -3, -2, -1, 0, 1, 2, 3. Let's plug those values in. Let's get that -3 and plug it in. So y equals -3 minus 1, which is going to be -4. Absolute value of -4 is +4. Okay, it's a little unclear what's going to happen, right? But let's just keep on going, and we'll see. That's going to be 3. -1 minus 1, -2, that's going to be 2. Let's see, I'm kind of running out of space. 0 minus 1, it's going to be -1, it's going to be 1. What about 1? Okay, this is where it gets a little interesting. If we put this 1 into my equation, 1 minus 1 is going to be 0. Absolute value of 0 is 0. If we put 2 in it, 2 minus 1 is 1. That's going to be 1. And you're starting to see kind of a pattern here, right? So what this does, and let me clear off some space down here. What this does is if I draw this, it's y equals absolute value of x minus 1. This shifted the whole thing to the right by 1. And so now you have that kind of graph. Okay, so what we've done so far is we've shifted it up and down. We can shift it left and right. And we can also make it steeper or less steep. Let's try this one. Y equals 3, absolute value of x. So what does this do? Got your x's, got my y's, 0, 1, 2. And if I put a 0 in, absolute value of 0 is 0. So that's, 0. If I put a 1 in, that's going to be 3. If I put a 2 in, that's going to be 6. And so you end up with this thing. If the normal one looks like this, but our one here looks like this, it's a lot steeper. Right? Instead of this point being 1, 1, that same point is 1, 3. It's made it 3 times as steep. Now a similar thing happens here if I make this negative. Y equals negative 2x. In this case, xy, negative 2, negative 1, 0, 1, 2. If I plug in negative 2 into the equation, if I plug that in there, then absolute value of negative 2 is positive 2. Negative 2 times 2 is negative 4. If I plug in a negative 1 in there, it's negative 2 times 1, negative 2. And you end up with this kind of pattern. So what that does is here, if the normal one looks like that, this one is twice as steep, but it's also going in this direction right here. Okay, so let's summarize everything into one simple thing to remember. Y equals a absolute value x minus h plus k. All right, now what does a control? This is where you might want to take a screenshot or take some notes here. If a is positive, then it looks like a V shape. If a is negative, then it looks like that shape. Okay, now a controls the slope. Okay, so a big means it's like that, or it's like that. A small, meaning close to 0, it's looking like that. Okay, that's A. Now HK control the vertex, and we flip the sign for H, and K comes directly down. All right. Now I know actual numbers will make a lot more sense here, so let's go ahead and do that. Let's say we have this equation. Y equals 3, x minus 2 plus 1. First thing we're going to do here is we're going to say, does it open up or down? And because that's a positive 3, it opens up. The second thing we're going to ask is the slope. Because that's 3, the slope is 3. Finally, we're going to do the vertex. And the vertex is we're going to get that guy, and it's going to be positive 2, comma, negative 1. Go back. We flip that sign, this one doesn't flip. So positive 2, positive 1. Okay, so if I was now to go to a graph and graph this, then how am I going to graph this? Let's graph this in blue. So I'm going to start with my vertex. I'm going to make a dot here at 2, 1. Okay, now I know it opens up and the slope is 3. So from here I'm going to go up 3, 1, 2, 3, over 1, and make a dot. Same thing here. Make a dot, make a dot, make a dot. And now I have that thing like that. Okay. Let's do one on Desmos here, and just practice on Desmos. So let's see. Okay, so let's go ahead and write y equals absolute value of x, and we're going to hide the image here for a sec. Plus, let's see, plus 8, and let's do this one here, x minus 1. Actually, let's make that smaller. Let's make that 2. Okay, so I want you to go ahead and think of where, first of all, the first question you ask is whether this opens up or down. And yep, it opens up because it's a positive. Second thing to figure out is where your vertex is. And your vertex here is going to be positive 1, comma 2. Okay, so kind of make that dot in your mind. And now the slope is 1. So kind of imagine what that's going to look like. And now let's press the button to reveal it. And yeah, so hopefully that's what you expected here. Again, the vertex here is positive 1, comma 2. It's positive 1 because there's a negative 1 inside the parentheses or the absolute value sign. We flip that to positive 1, and the 2 comes from the 2. What if we did something here and just stuck the number 2 in front of it? See how it gets steeper? What if we made it 22? 222 gets steeper and steeper and steeper. What happens if we make this instead some kind of fraction like 1/2? Now, here the slope is 1/2, so you go up 1 over 2. So up 1 over 2, up 1 over 2. That's your slope. What if we put a negative sign in front of it? Okay, now it's the same thing, but it's flipped upside down. Okay, so that's everything you need to know about graphing absolute value functions. One more time, just to recap here. When you're asked to graph an absolute value function, like y equals negative 3, x plus 7 minus 1, then you ask yourself, number 1, does it open up or down? How do you tell? You look at that sign. Because that sign's negative, opens down. Second thing we want to check is the slope. Slope is 3. Third thing is the vertex. And the vertex, just like for quadratics, you flip that one, and this one comes straight down. And that's it. Now we can go ahead and graph this one. So negative 7, negative 1, so we got that point, negative 7, comma, negative 1. Now I know it opens down, and I'd want to go down 3 over 1, down 3 over 1, down 3 over 1, down 3 over 1. Yeah, and you have that all graphed out. Okay, guys, thanks for watching.